What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking the 5 rookies that you need to draft for this 2024 fantasy football season. High upside rookies that you need to take a chance on. So sit back, relax. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have? We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get right into it. As you can see, we've got the consensus fantasy football draft rankings pulled up as of right now, early June, via fantasypros on a PPR scoring basis. And as I mentioned before, these are high upside rookies. Now, I'm not going to mention the obvious names like Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors, guys that are being drafted in the first 2 rounds, in the first 4 rounds. No, we're going to take a deeper look at this, outside the top 60, the top 70, the top 80, guys that, you can take a chance on later on in those later rounds. Won't cost you all that much, but there's definitely upside associated with it. And if you don't want to invest an early round pick in some of those other rookies, then, this is a good alternative. So let's, without further ado, kick it off. And we start here at number 90 with one Jayden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. Comes in at quarterback 14. Interestingly enough, one spot ahead of Caleb Williams, his fellow rookie quarterback who was drafted first overall. But Jayden Daniels, obviously not far behind. And the logic is simple with Jayden Daniels. You look at the rookie quarterback class, Daniels, Caleb Williams, McCarthy, and others. And Daniels is at the top of that list, at least in terms of athleticism, in terms of what he can do on the ground, pure rushing ability, rushing yardage upside, rushing touchdown upside. And, let's just take a look here at these other quarterbacks close to him or even behind him. And again, he comes in at quarterback 14, right in front of him, Jared Goff, quarterback 13. Tua in front of him. Behind him, Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, quarterback 16, Trevor Lawrence, quarterback 17, Kirk Cousins, quarterback 18. The point being is we've gotten outside that grouping of top 10 quarterbacks, and out of all the names that I listed, by far and away, the quarterback with the highest rushing upside is Jayden Daniels. So if any one of these guys, especially if you're in a 10-team league, not too many individuals are probably getting 2 quarterbacks early on. Like, you can wait for a quarterback until probably the double-digit rounds. And in that scenario, Daniels definitely gives you the highest upside. Again, young, athletic guy, doesn't have an injury history like some of the other names that we mentioned. All things considered, I think one of the reasons why he's ranked lower is, first and foremost, he's a rookie. Typically, rookie quarterbacks do tend to struggle, right? But when you sprinkle in that rushing aspect, that can treat a lot of ailments out there. There's a reason why we call these guys, Konami quarterbacks, cheat codes, basically, because that rushing upside can solve a lot of issues. We've seen guys, that don't break 4,000 yards passing, but because of what they can do on the ground, if they can get you over 500 rushing yards, close to double-digit rushing touchdowns, boy, you are cooking for fantasy football purposes. I think Jayden Daniels has that upside. You look at the offense in general as well. There's playmakers too, right? Terry McLaurin, Dotson showed some flashes last year. You added Austin Eckler. You've got Brian Robinson. So, from a passing perspective, he has got options as well. So for that reason, I think when it comes to rookie quarterbacks that have the highest upside, it starts with Jayden Daniels. But let's move on now, and we're going to look at our first wide receiver here that needs to be mentioned. That is Ladd McConkey of the LA Chargers. And with McConkey, again, similar type of situation. He's ranked as the wide receiver 48. Won't cost you all that much. Again, double-digit rounds. Some people are going to say, I don't want to take a chance on him, rookie wide receiver. But you look at that wide receiver room for the Chargers. No more Keenan Allen, no more Mike Williams. We all know what Quinn Johnston has been, or I should say, rather hasn't been. And all reports coming out of camp is that McConkey, has been that dude. He's been as advertised. Now, I do think that Josh Palmer is going to be probably the top overall wide receiver for the Chargers, but we all know the talent of Justin Herbert. The guy is an elite quarterback in this league, and he can sustain multiple fantasy relevant wide receivers. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if come the end of the season, McConkey is the number one on this team. But even if that's not the case, I still think he can give you some fantasy value if he's the number two opposite Josh Palmer. And that's what you're looking for here when we get to this point in time. You look for a young, promising wide receiver that's tied to an elite quarterback talent. McConkey checks those boxes, doesn't have a lot of competition, and even though the Chargers are going to want to run the football, maybe a little bit of a different mentality with Harbaugh there as the coach, McConkey is going to be involved, and I do think that, again, he has the upside to win the wide receiver one battle in this room, which you can't say that for a lot of the wide receivers here once we get to close the outside top 50 guys at the wide receiver position. Now moving on, though, let's get to the number 3 rookie in our list, and that is Jonathon Brooks of the Carolina Panthers. Brooks is a really, really interesting guy to me, and, you know, in a lot of mock drafts that I've done, I've kind of steered clear of him just because I feel like by that point in time, I've already taken care of my running back position. He comes in as the running back 35. Honestly, I think he's somebody that his probably ADP will only go up the closer and closer we get to the actual draft because people tend to fall in love with rookie running backs. But let's start with this. There is no Saquon Barkley. There is no Bijan Robinson in this rookie draft class. However, Jonathon Brooks was the first running back selected. He was a guy that a lot of people had as the top overall running back. And, you know, the main thing for him is coming off an ACL. But, you know, obviously he was cleared. The Panthers checked him out, and they were confident enough in taking him. There's time has passed, and a lot of people said if it wasn't for the ACL, like he would have been a first round selection. He would have by far and away been the top overall running back. But let's look at landing spot now, right? Because the Carolina Panthers were the worst team in football last year. What did they end up doing in free agency? Well, one of their main focuses was upgrading that offensive line, specifically the guard positions. I think that's going to help everyone, but it's definitely going to help the interior of that offensive line, help develop the run. It's a good thing for Jonathon Brooks. On top of that, you know, coaches have come out and said they want to run the football because they want to take pressure off Bryce Young. Bryce Young has not been as advertised. So what's a great way to take pressure off your young quarterback? Well, establish the run. Now, I will say that the running back room is definitely very, very crowded here. You've got Chuba Hubbard, you've got Miles Sanders, Penny, and Jonathon Brooks. Now, the way I envision this thing playing out, I think one of those guys, maybe Miles Sanders, will end up getting cut before or traded before the start of the season. And I'm going to be very upfront with you. Chuba Hubbard will be the top overall Carolina running back to start off the year. Whether it's because of experience, whether it's because of the injury to Jonathon Brooks, or both, Chuba Hubbard will be given that opportunity first. However, if we're talking about upside, and with these rookie running backs, a lot of time it's about patience and it's about having them deliver in crunch time, which equates to the fantasy football playoffs. I think that's what you're looking here with Jonathon Brooks. Potentially a late season surge where he can establish himself as the top guy. You're going to notice that trend with the other running back that we mentioned here in a little bit. But that's kind of the formula that you're looking for with these high upside rookie running backs. Unless they're going, you know, to a clear-cut team where they're going to be the number one guy and they were drafted very highly, you're looking for a situation where they can take over that backfield. They still had high draft capital associated with them, and they were highly touted coming out of college. So Jonathon Brooks checks all those boxes, and I do think, even though it will probably be a slow start, he does have the potential later on in the year to start delivering for the Panthers. Now, continuing on, I mentioned that we're going to have another running back on this list. That is Trey Benson of the Arizona Cardinals. And with Trey Benson, you know, he's a guy comes in at running back 41. Honestly, if you wanted to make the argument that he should be the first rookie running back selected over Jonathon Brooks, I wouldn't have too many issues with it, mainly because he doesn't have that injury situation. Now, yes, he is playing behind James Conner. And, James Conner for the Cardinals was very, very solid for them last year. But we do know with James Conner, because of his rushing style, because of age, he typically does tend to miss time. And I said it before, you look for opportunities where these rookies can kind of get their foot in the door. And, whether we like to admit it or not, injuries can lead to that. And I could see a scenario where James Conner gets a little bit banged up. Trey Benson afterwards is I would say for sure, the next man up at the running back position. Again, another running back with high draft capital associated with him in regards to where the Cardinals drafted him. I think that Benson can be in that similar role to Jonathon Brooks. Everything that we kind of said about him, you can kind of copy and paste in regards to Trey Benson. And if you're patient enough to be able to stash this guy and, with a high injury risk type of profile that James Conner has, then Trey Benson could end up paying dividends as the season progresses. And then finally, we've got Keon Coleman of the Buffalo Bills, wide receiver 55 right now. And with Keon Coleman, he was somebody that the Buffalo Bills drafted early on and is, by a lot of people, kind of going to be that hopefully next big wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And the reason being is because, well, they traded away Stephon Diggs, no more Gabe Davis, so that left kind of one of their own in Shakir. They added Curtis Samuel, who I've been on record saying that I think Curtis Samuel is probably, the better value out of both those guys. Here you can see them ranked pretty closely together, but in a lot of drafts that I've done, Keon Coleman does get drafted ahead of Curtis Samuel, but that kind of goes into the aspect of people are realizing that upside. They want to take a chance on the unknown of the rookie wide receiver, the big body guy, the guy that will be given all the opportunities considering his draft capital. And again, you pair him up with an elite quarterback, similar to what I said about Ladd McConkey. You pair him up with Josh Allen, then anything is possible. I do think one of these guys, whether it's Curtis Samuel or Keon Coleman, will end up being kind of a fantasy gem for the wide receiver position and end up really, really over-delivering on their ADP. The question is which one. If you go with Keon Coleman, I don't blame you. I think that Josh Allen, even with the fact that he's highly touted because of his rushing upside, he is still very, very elite as a thrower of the football. A lot of people have him ranked specifically as their number one overall quarterback in fantasy football. So those weapons are going to be valuable to some extent that he has. It's just a matter of when will Keon Coleman deliver. Like, I'm not worried about Shakir. I think the biggest competition to Coleman will be, Curtis Samuel. And then maybe we'll see how much the tight ends are involved with Dalton Kincaid. But to me, I think you go with Keon Coleman. He's not going to be a Stephon Diggs replacement, 1-for-1 or anything like that. But you see those physical traits, and it's hard not to like what you see. There's going to be a lot of target share, a lot of opportunity here. Again, you've lost Gabe Davis, you've lost Stephon Diggs, and we're going to have opportunities here for a lot of these guys in Buffalo to deliver. So for that reason, Keon Coleman definitely lands on this list. He's got an opportunity, I would say, ahead of some other wide receivers that were drafted right around his range to be the number one guy, like as opposed to maybe a Brian Thomas, where we know that Christian Kirk is the top dude for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like with Xavier Legette, we know that Deontay Johnson is the number one guy in Carolina, maybe even Adam Thielen ahead of him. Whereas with Keon Coleman, with guys like Ladd McConkey, they can emerge. It would not shock us to be the number one wide receivers for their teams. That's why Keon Coleman's name had to be mentioned. But with that, we wrap up this breakdown of our top 5 must-draft high upside rookies. If If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section if you agreed, if you didn't, other names you'd put on this list and why, along with any other questions you guys might have. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.